When I first looked at the blank screen with only a title typed out, now 2 days ago, I wondered if this episode would be like episode 5, Sunglasses, which I just couldn't think of anything to say about. There is a long-shot relationship between the two. While writing Sunglasses, I came upon a pseudoscientific journal that discussed the case of the 2 young men in Brazil who died on a hill under mysterious circumstances. While researching Heartburn, I also came upon a professional journal in which a particular case was painstakingly described in the most scientific fashion for the time frame of the publication, the early 19th century. Then I'm having the afternoon walk with my mate, and he asks after my current essay, and I tell him that I can't seem to find any relationship between the subject matter and today's modern world. That is, until I say aloud, I just don't see how spontaneous combustion of the human body relates to what the world is going through right now. And hearing those words leak from my lips, I got 2 fire-related images: liar, liar, pants on fire, and the idea that your hair is on fire, meaning that you're having a melodramatic or hysterical reaction to something that is probably really bad. There's always a delay, a time warp in what I share with you all. I'm not a daily poster of videos or podcast episodes, not even a weekly poster. I work in batches and have material uploaded and programmed into the future. I've talked about this before. Today is the Buying Boycott Day in the USA, the 28th of February, 2025. Yet you, dear listener, won't hear these thoughts or read them until they go live on the 7th of April. Just happened to me yesterday as I made a reference to the Pope being ill in 2025, coinciding with the Pope being ill back in 1938. But the Pope may not be ill at the end of March 2025 when you listeners will hear that I mention the Pope being ill. Of course, my 1938 Pope was ill at the end of October of that year. The current Pope is ill at the end of February. That relieved me of worry about that time warp. There isn't much time warp problem here, though. We're talking science denial, vaccines, climate change, economics, politics. All of these and many other themes can be explained and understood through the application of scientific rigor, principles, and method on observable data. That does not seem to be what's going on right now, though. In Heartburn, we have a respected man of medicine, whatever that really meant back at the outset of the 19th century, making the case for scientific study of a phenomena that, until that date, had been explained through conspiracy theories and superstitious belief systems. His argument is clear. Just because we don't understand something now doesn't mean that we can't understand it in a future moment through careful observation and study. Misunderstanding becomes disunderstanding when such events, such as spontaneous combustion of the human body, are relegated to whispered rumors instead of scientific rigor. We're talking about a 3-year span of time in which Britain outlawed the Hindu practice of suttee, a practice in which a widow throws herself onto her husband's funeral pyre and burns to death. English chemist John Walker sells the world's first friction matches, 100 matches in a tin case with a piece of sandpaper. One Jonathan Martin, a religious fanatic who had spent and would spend time in lunatic care, set fire to the York Cathedral because the organ buzzed when played. New religion bursts forth with the publication of the Book of Mormon and the establishment of that church. The King of France suspends the freedom of press. On the other side of the pond, this is a time when U.S. President John Quincy Adams signs the Tariff of Abominations into law to protect industry in the North, a tariff on raw materials including iron, hemp for rope, and flax. The next president, Andrew Jackson, whose inaugural ball was attended by unruly crowds, tries to buy Texas from Mexico, but gets turned down. And thinking about down from the hills, Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act that forced the removal of Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, and Seminole tribes out of Georgia and surrounding states, setting the stage for the Cherokee Trail of Tears. On the bright side of history, Webster's Dictionary, the first American English dictionary, registered its copyright. Mary Shelley's novel, Frankenstein, is dramatized on stage under the name Presumption, or The Fate of Frankenstein. Sarah Josepha Hale provides us with the text for the second recording of the human voice by publishing Mary Had a Little Lamb. Wendell Holmes gifts us with a tribute to a warship with Old Ironsides. Charles Darwin is admitted to Christ's College, Cambridge. French naturalists begin debating animal structure, and in Amsterdam, the General Trade Journal newspaper begins publication. Sometimes our prejudices and hard-set belief systems must be challenged when faced with the unknown. These days, women are heading back into the kitchen and bedroom, submitting to their husbands' suppressing of their rights as people. A religious right draws on well-established beliefs to ignore those very beliefs in the secular world of politics and civic behavior. A current president is vomiting out untruths about tariffs and basing his tariff activity on those untruths. Both the untruths and the tariffs themselves are abominations. That same president talks about taking over Panama, Canada, and Greenland, though he doesn't mention buying them, just expropriating them. That same president who has openly praised Andrew Jackson has begun his own vapor trail of tears in the skies on the way to Guatemala, Guantanamo, Costa Rica, and for Indians, Amritsar. That same president is actively attacking the freedom of press in his country, picking and choosing who will report on his actions, prohibiting voices from challenging them. What stands out for me in the story of Heartburn is how one man stands by his convictions despite the doubt and cynicism of those who would profess to be his equals in a time of censorship and governmental overreach. As the real-life Dr. Thomas Newell expresses, quote, "If hypothesis does not anticipate truth, it sometimes leads the way to it, and, like the scaffolding to a building, it helps us in keeping pace with the more solid edifice we are erecting." Don't allow these events to lead you to spontaneous combustion of the human body. Don't set your hair on fire. Don't listen to those whose pants are on fire. Step back. Look at what is before you. Do not bend to the insistence of others. Draw your own conclusions and act accordingly. That's something any of us can do, don't you think? Okay, thanks for listening. Check out the description. There's links to transcriptions of this video, to the original podcast episode on You're Listening to Radio Revel, the Keyhole Witness series, and to the transcription of that, as well as to the original material that inspired that episode. Yes, and don't forget to listen, like, subscribe, and share. Cheers. Chickasaw, no. The next president, Andrew John, no. Convictions despite the doubt and no.